Good afternoon, 22 minutes after 4, 422. This is Jonathan Rush, he's Kelly Nash. You can always email us by using our last names, Rush and Nash. Together you get Rash at WVOC.com. All right, now we're in the studio this afternoon. Benjamin Dunn is here on the campaign trail running against Lindsey Graham, upcoming U.S. Senate primary Republican. Good to have you back in the studio. Good to see you again. Hope your family's well.
Yes, sir.
All right, now, and you mentioned military service a few minutes ago. Remind our listeners exactly what it is in your active service or your past experience with the military.
I've been an infantry officer in the South Carolina Army National Guard for about 19 years. My deployment in Afghanistan, I was on an embedded training team, which basically meant it was myself and a sergeant, and we advised a company of Afghan National Army soldiers and went on missions with them and trained with them and that sort of thing.
And there are several candidates that are running against Lindsey Graham, and Lindsey himself has military experience. So thank you again for your service.
Benjamin Dunn hanging out in the studio. Now, one of the big concerns for me, and I may be taking more of the moderate position here, which may not appeal to a lot of the people who are looking to get rid of Lindsey Graham, but I just like to see congressmen find center ground where they can actually do business, whether they're senators, congressmen, whatever. I think that that's kind of what the United States was built on, was that there's two different views. We have the conservative view and a liberal view, and those just seem to have been running for hundreds of years. Even if looking back at the founding fathers, you can see some were liberal and some were conservative. And somehow they always found a middle ground. Do you see yourself having an ability to negotiate with certain liberal senators, or is it to the point now, like where a lot of people say, Lindsey Graham can't negotiate with anybody because he'll get killed by people on the right?
I think there's a couple of things on that, Kelly. First of all, in my mind, compromise is a quintessential conservative trait that unfortunately over the years has it's almost been taken from us, and I'll explain to you what I mean by that. The conservative viewpoint generally is, I'm here on my land doing what I want. You're on your land doing what you want. As long as I'm not doing anything that's impacting you or denying you rights, and vice versa, then we should both be happy with one another. I think that the reason why conservatives have gotten so disgusted with the idea of compromise is it seems like far too often the way things have worked in Washington is that the Democrats proposed a solution that in some way or another grew the government by 8%. Well, the Republican alternative would be to grow the government by 2%, so they compromise and it grows by 4 or 5%. And that's what has struck me, and I've in talking to folks all around the state, that's the feedback that I get, and that's why I think people on the conservative side are so through with the notion of we need to work with the other side and we need to compromise with them. What I do think is that it is always possible to peel off enough folks on the other side if you do it in small steps. So the idea is if you go in with conservative fundamental principles and you don't deviate from those, but at the same time you know that most of the time you're not going to be swinging for the fences. Most of the time it's going to be small, I'm mixing my metaphors here, but it's going to be small yardage gains. Every now and then you're going to have the chance, like I said, to score a big victory and really, really move the ball forward and getting our country back on track. But most of those are going to be little small things. And generally, if you keep it small enough and you're committed to doing it over time, we can recast this country on a conservative track where it needs to be. First, because that I think comports to the fundamental principles of most South Carolina voters, but also because it actually works as opposed to the stuff that the progressives talk about, which sounds great, but is completely unworkable in the real world.
We got maybe another 3 minutes here with you. I wanted to ask you before we have to wrap up for the news. One of the questions I have, and it seems like everybody in Washington is having a conversation, certainly those running for the Senate, and on a national scale, everyone except Justice Ginsburg has an opinion about who should replace Justice Ginsburg as they try to wheel her out as quickly as possible. before the current administration leaves office. Talk to me about Supreme Court appointments.
And I think, again, in traveling around the state and talking to folks, that's one of the biggest issues that conservatives in South Carolina have with Lindsey Graham. Senator Graham's position generally seems to be that when President Obama nominates folks like Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan, that as long as they are qualified in the strictest sense of the term to sit on the court, that he is going to vote to approve them, and that he's really not going to apply much in the way of an ideological test. While I understand that argument, it just doesn't work in this day and age. I think that advice and consent of the Senate means that individual senators can and should think through the positions that nominees to the federal bench, and particularly the Supreme Court, have espoused in the past, and what that's going to mean for the future of our country. So I absolutely would have, for example, voted against a Sotomayor or a Kagan, because those ladies, and again, nothing against them personally, but they seem to hold views of the Constitution that are completely divergent from mine and from anything that conservatives generally hold.
Well, we only have like a minute or so left, so anything that you wanted to just kind of wrap up, why should people vote for Benjamin Dunn?
I think first, again, my background, I'm an attorney. I represented individuals doing things like real estate, contractual disputes, and employment. So I've seen the impediments that this massive government bureaucracy puts in people's way. I have served in the military, and I've done a tour in Afghanistan, so I understand the sharp end of foreign policy. I understand the sacrifices that requires. And also, I think I have a vision of how to get things done, which is that it's great to say that we want to get rid of the Department of Education. It's great to say that we want to drop Obamacare, but then we have to have the then what ready. And we again, you have to be committed not just to those times when you can get a home run, but you got to do the dirty work of the 1,000 small steps it's going to take to get our country back on a conservative course where it needs to be.
The webpage is BenjaminDunn, DUNN.org, if you'd like to visit there. Is there other things that you'd like to promote for them to be able to hear more about your platform positions?
Well, again, I really appreciate folks going to the website. I've put in some pretty detailed explanations of my views on a number of issues, and all you can ask folks to do is educate themselves, see what they think, and then please get behind a candidate, because that's the most important thing. Is you've got to participate. If you want things to change, you must participate in the process. Speaking of participation, do you have a link on your webpage for upcoming events where they can attend? Yes, sir. Okay, good, excellent. All right, sir. Well, we appreciate you stopping by. Thanks for BenjaminDunn.org is the webpage. It is 4:30. This is Jonathan Rush. He's Kelly Nash.